Lesson agenda. I do. Introduction. We do. Guided reading check for understanding. You do. Summarize, write your own conclusion. W.39. The Roaring Twenties. Introduction. The Roaring Twenties, also known as the Jazz Age, was a decade of significant change in American history, marked by urbanization, cultural upheaval, political reforms, and economic growth. This lesson will explore four key themes of the 1920s: urbanization and the growth of cities, women's liberation and the rise of the flapper culture, prohibition and organized crime, and entertainment and the rise of jazz. These themes reflect the social, cultural, and political trends of the era and shed light on the ways in which the 1920s transformed American society. Each of these themes will be examined in detail to provide a comprehensive understanding of the decade's historical significance. Guided reading. Urbanization and the growth of cities. In addition to the general trend of urbanization, the growth of cities during the 1920s was characterized by specific demographic shifts. For example, African Americans from the rural South migrated in large numbers to cities in the North and Midwest, seeking better economic opportunities and an escape from the violence and discrimination of the Jim Crow South. This migration, known as the Great Migration, brought about significant changes to the social and cultural fabric of northern cities such as Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. Along with African Americans, many immigrants from Europe also flocked to urban centers during this period. These immigrants, including Italians, Irish, and Eastern Europeans, settled in cities and formed ethnic enclaves that provided a sense of community and support. However, they also faced discrimination and prejudice from established residents, leading to tensions and conflicts in some neighborhoods. Moreover, the growth of cities also led to significant changes in the workforce. With the expansion of industries such as manufacturing and transportation, many working-class individuals moved to cities to take advantage of new job opportunities. Women also entered the workforce in greater numbers during this period, taking on jobs in factories and offices that were previously held exclusively by men. The growth of cities also had a significant impact on architecture and urban design. The rise of skyscrapers, such as the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building in New York City, reflected the technological advancements and optimism of the era. Architects and planners experimented with new forms and styles, such as Art Deco and Modernism, that reflected the fast-paced and glamorous lifestyle of city dwellers. Check for understanding. 1. What was the Great Migration? 2. What were some of the new industries that emerged during the growth of cities in the 1920s? 3. What were some of the new styles and forms of architecture and urban design that emerged in the 1920s? Women's liberation and the flapper culture. The women's liberation movement and the rise of the flapper culture were intertwined and reflected the growing desire among women for greater autonomy and agency in their lives. The flapper culture was characterized by more than just fashion choices and dance moves. It represented a radical shift in social norms and gender expectations. Women were no longer content to be confined to traditional roles as wives and mothers, and instead sought to carve out their own identities and pursue their own interests. In addition to fashion and lifestyle choices, the flapper culture also influenced popular culture and media. Women began to appear in films and magazines in more prominent and diverse roles, challenging traditional depictions of femininity and womanhood. Writers such as F. Scott Fitzgerald and Edith Wharton captured the spirit of the times in their novels, which explored themes of youth, rebellion, and sexual freedom. The women's liberation movement of the 1920s was not limited to the flapper culture. However, women across the country were organizing and advocating for their rights, demanding equal pay, better working conditions, and access to education and health care. Activists such as Alice Paul and Margaret Sanger were instrumental in advancing the cause of women's rights and reproductive freedom. The passage of the 19th Amendment was a significant milestone for women's rights, but it was only the beginning of a long struggle for equality. Despite the progress made in the 1920s, women continued to face discrimination and inequality in many areas of life, including the workplace and the legal system. Nevertheless, the women's liberation movement of the 1920s laid the groundwork for future generations of feminists and social activists. The spirit of the flapper culture, with its emphasis on individualism and self-expression, continues to inspire women today to challenge gender norms and fight for their rights and freedoms. Check for understanding. 4. What is the flapper culture, and what did it represent? 5. How did the flapper culture influence popular culture and media? 6. How did the women's liberation movement of the 1920s lay the groundwork for future generations of feminists and social activists? Prohibition and organized crime. The 1920s were a period of great transformation in American history. However, one event that remains etched in the nation's memory is the passage of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which ushered in the era of Prohibition. This monumental piece of legislation was designed to prohibit the sale, transportation, and consumption of alcoholic beverages throughout the country. While it was intended to promote morality and prevent social ills, it had an unintended consequence that would reshape the landscape of organized crime in America. Prohibition sparked a new era of crime that was characterized by the emergence of ruthless gangsters who sought to profit from the illicit trade of alcohol. These criminals, including notorious figures such as Al Capone and Bugs Moran, became powerful players in the illegal alcohol industry, amassing vast fortunes and controlling entire cities. They were ruthless and cunning, and they stopped at nothing to maintain their dominance over their territories. One of the primary reasons for the rise of organized crime during Prohibition was the proliferation of speakeasies or underground bars that served alcohol in secret. These establishments became popular among ordinary citizens who were looking for a way to unwind and relax after a hard day's work. Speakeasies were typically hidden behind unmarked doors, in basements, or in back alleys, making them difficult to find and easy to operate without attracting the attention of law enforcement. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement agencies, Prohibition failed to achieve its goals of reducing crime, promoting sobriety, and protecting public health. The ban on alcohol consumption only served to create a thriving underground market that was controlled by organized crime syndicates. Eventually, the country realized that Prohibition was a failed experiment, and in 1933, the 21st Amendment was passed, repealing the 18th Amendment and ending the era of Prohibition. Check for understanding. 7. What was the purpose of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution? 8. What unintended consequence did the 18th Amendment have on American society? 9. Why did speakeasies become popular during Prohibition? Entertainment and the rise of jazz. The 1920s was a time of artistic innovation, with jazz music at the forefront of this change. Jazz music, with its origins in New Orleans and Chicago, became incredibly popular during the decade, and jazz clubs and performers, such as Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, achieved widespread fame. With advancements in technology and the rise of consumer culture, radio became a popular form of entertainment and information, with many households owning a radio set. People could enjoy listening to live music performances, news broadcasts, and other forms of programming from the comfort of their own homes, contributing to the growth of jazz music's popularity. Beyond the music scene, the advancements in radio technology paved the way for the emergence of mass media. This allowed for the widespread dissemination of news, entertainment, and cultural content, with newspapers, magazines, and film studios capitalizing on this growth. As a result, a new form of popular culture emerged, reaching audiences across the country and beyond. The advancements in radio and mass media also had significant social and cultural implications. They helped to foster a sense of national identity and shared cultural experiences, as people across the country listened to the same music, watched the same movies, and read the same news. This contributed to the development of a new sense of American identity, one that was more urban, diverse, and connected than ever before. Check for understanding. 10. Who were some of the popular jazz musicians of the era? 11. What was the impact of radio and mass media on American culture during the 1920s? write your own conclusion. Objective. Students will create a conclusion that summarizes key points in the passages above. Directions. 1. Read the passages carefully. 2. Determine the main idea or point. 3. Summarize what you learned from the passage. 4. Write a sentence or two that explains each main idea from each passage. 5. Check your writing to make sure it makes sense and that you've included everything you wanted to say.